So what does being a witch mean to you?
I don't really feel like I've got that much knowledge around the topic to answer that. Yeah,
I also don't know.
It's not covered that much in like media or like stuff like that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, what springs into mind first of all is, the usual sort of pointy hat, pointy nose, cackling, broomstick, all of that sort of stuff.
Someone with powers, normally having a big cauldron pot. Generally probably evil.
I suppose there's like quite a lot of history rooted in it, with the witch hunts and all of that. But I don't think I'd say that being a witch is necessarily evil.
But I do have some pagan friends, and they look at medicinal herbs and poison plants and, all of those sort of things. So I think it's more than just being that sort of pointy-nosed woman. It's anybody who likes being more in touch with nature, I suppose.
I'd say a witch is just being able to create things that are natural, I suppose, rather than necessarily being horrible or bad. Magic, essentially. I guess that's about it.
For you?
Well, when I was younger, one of my neighbours was a witch. We called her a white witch. And, I had fun with it as a child because she always went all out on Halloween. She had this little toy spider that would jump out at you when you put your hand in the bowl.
It's great myth and legend. Great opportunity to celebrate something or get involved in some ritual or whatever. So that would be my take on it. But I wouldn't want to, personally.
She also was one of the original actresses for Morticia Adams, but she did continue with witchcraft later in life. I didn't know much about what she actually did, and then I found out more about witchcraft later because my best friend considers herself a witch.
Traditional witch with a scary hat, black cats, spells and so on, and then you've got more the pagan version of Wichita, I think it is, something like that, which is a bit more benign.
Having some sort of power or having an art that can make you create something else from magic, really. Yeah.
And medieval times, accusation of witches was generally used to keep women in their places. So I used to call my mum a witch as a term of endearment, so it's probably unique.
I think it's sort of changed in sort of popular media in the last sort of 10, 15 years, but I think generally a lot of people who identify with the Wicca religion call themselves witches. They're people that are very spiritual and believe in a lot of sort of power of manifestation and the power of what you can do with nature and yourself, and being connected with things like the moon and stars and, again, nature.
Witchcraft. It's clear that the story behind its origin is shrouded in mystery, and it's clear that since its inception, things have changed. The public agree on some points, disagree on others, and some have a vague understanding of the obscure religion it appears to be linked to. What are witches? Are they characters of fiction? Are they real people? Do they cast spells? What do they stand for? What do they believe in? What is paganism? It all starts in 700 BC. Paganus, Latin. Derived from pagus, the word for country district or village, paganus is the term used for people who lived in those rural locations, away from civilizations. As the word became more used, it took on the extra connotation of simple-minded people from the country. And, further down the line, it was used as a derogatory term for non-Christians. The word pagan today doesn't have the same connotations. Most people see it as referring to religions following older, pre-Christian gods, almost lost to history. Most think of nature and celebrating its power. While there are many forms and sections of paganism, most do follow similar beliefs in the power of nature. Gods of wildlife and fertility, harvest festivals, rituals encouraging good energy, the effects of the moon cycles. There is a common theme of spirituality and magic. But how does this link to witchcraft? Jumping ahead to the 1500s, superstition was at an all-time high. The lack of knowledge on disease and childbirth led to the population blaming black magic for all the unexplained evil in the world. Human brains are wired to come up with explanations for events, so when no obvious explanation is present, the mind makes its own reasons. However, people tend to pin the blame on anyone, especially if it's convenient. Mix that with the misogyny of the time, this led to many women being labelled as witches and being punished for miscarriages or unfruitful harvests. It was thought that witches were practitioners of black magic, servants to the devil, and would cast spells and curses against the human race. The witch trials are a more documented piece of history. Witchfinders would go from town to town, uncovering the demons before testing them to see if they were a witch or not. Most of these tests were elaborate execution methods, wherein if you died, you weren't a witch, and if you somehow survived, you were a witch and executed. It truly is an unfortunate testament to how the human mind rationalizes discrimination. Accused witches would be thrown in rivers to see if they'd float, pricked with small daggers called bodkins hundreds of times to see if they'd bleed, and forced to touch sick people to see if they'd be cured of the illness the witch had supposedly placed on them. Fear of witches carried on into the 16, 17, 18 and 1900s. The last convicted witch was Helen Duncan in 1944, but she was only charged with pretending to procure spirits. By the 1900s, witches were not nearly as feared. In fact, the 1900s are where witchcraft started to become more popular. It began with Gerald Gardner, an author born on June 13, 1884. When he was 26 in 1911, he moved to Malaya, working as a civil servant. But his true interests lay with the indigenous people and their unique religious practices. He wrote many books on similar subjects. After retiring in 1936, he became interested in an occult group called the Rosicrucian Order Crotona Fellowship, finally being fully initiated in 1939. It was here, joining his writings on the Malayan people, the well-known pieces from Aleister Crowley, inspiration from Freemasonry, and adding in ceremonial magic, Gardner created the Wicca religion. With a new direction in life, Gerald Gardner wanted the public to know about this new way of living. And so, he wrote the book Witchcraft Today in 1954, the most significant of his works for the popularization of the Wicca religion. It's interesting to note that similar groups existed prior. However, they were separated and very independent. Wicca today is a more unified religion than those earlier covens, but it is still very individualistic, with several branches forming under the Wiccan umbrella term. It is also interesting to note that there are not many strong links actually connecting witches from the 1500s and practitioners of Wicca today. In the same way that it was created, many of its pieces were inspired by other groups or ideologies. Being a witch today can mean anything from enjoying the aesthetic to performing rituals in nature. It's a broad term that you decide the meaning of, which, I think, beautifully represents its inception. The Wiccan religion is very personal and empowering. It is very individualistic, yet manages to carry a sense of community with it. Much like the nature it worships, it grows and adapts. Witchcraft has a compelling history, and it seems that going into the future, witchcraft will only become more powerful. Thank you for listening.